Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Half Pint session. Today on the Half Pint session, we have the OG. I think he was the first C.S. Lewis podcast I ever listened to. The godfather of us all, Mr. William O'Flaherty. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me today.
Well, what have you been up to recently? Because I haven't seen you online.
Yes. Well, yeah, my regular full-time job, been doing a lot of focus in on that. Although the time of this recording, I just recorded a interview and discussion. I brought someone else in, but the new book by Leslie Baines on C.S. Lewis and Scripture. And so I had a great conversation. We were online for about a couple hours. Got about 90 minutes worth of material. So by the time they see this, hear this, that might already be out. But other than that, been going into the archives with some of my stuff, and because of other demands and re-releasing things from the early days.
Yeah, the Baines book is interesting because we got our interview out a couple of weeks ago, and I saw Chris Pipkin from the Inklings Variety Hour, his dropped this morning as well. So it's really interesting listening to other people interview an author that you've interviewed about the same book and seeing sort of how they sort of build off each other. It's kind of fun. But we are here today not to talk about your podcasting legacy, but about a book that you brought out, was it 6 months ago now?
Right. Yes. Yeah. It was earlier this year. I think we hit around June. But just briefly in passing too about other things I've been up to. Also, I haven't been as active at the time that we're recording, but since I was diagnosed in early 2024 with level 1 autism, I have a website called Adult Autism with William and a companion YouTube channel. So there's material there that hasn't been too new lately, but anyway, this book is one of the things that I've been excited about this year, because Screwtape Letters was one of the first books that I read by Lewis and enjoyed it from the start. Very clever book, and glad to return to it and have something new with some revising of some other material from the first book that came out by me that was on the Screwtape Letters as well.
Mm-hmm. And so what's the difference between the two books? Is this more of a second edition, or is it a repackaged, reorganized, resort kind of activity?
Yeah, it's different in many ways, but it has some similarities. The main way that I tend to think about it is that the first book, which was called C.S. Lewis Goes to Hell, and then it says a companion and study guide to the Screwtape Letters, and that initial title we enjoyed and loved, but it was probably too clever for itself, and so maybe as many people didn't find it, because about 6 months before that book came out, someone came out with the Screwtape Letters study guide. So guess what comes up when you search
Screwtape Letters study guide?
Yeah. So anyway, but so that book was focused mostly for small groups, but individuals could still benefit from it and study it themselves. But then one of the unique things that I did in that book was a topical glossary. And so I was doing some things now, I guess it's almost 2 years ago, I was at least preparing for it. And I was looking at that topical glossary, and I thought, you know what, I could expand this topical glossary. And so I made that the main focus. And one of the key things for this new book, simply called, let's see, I got on the side here, the Screwtape Letters Handbook, was to focus in on that. Even though it's a single book, I saw that, so this newer one is geared more towards individuals, but can also be used for a small group. But this new one does not have the study questions in it. It just provides first a brand new outline. In the first book, I did a really short outline that I started to develop over 20 years ago when I was doing a Sunday school class. We had different people teach it. It was a singles group. I was single at the time. And so I volunteered and did that. So I laid the groundwork for some things there. And so I did a nice, concise material for it to summarize. Then, so this new book, the first section is a outline form, to where also, I don't know that I've seen other people do the Screwtape Letters this way, but I go ahead and for each letter, then I encourage people to number the paragraphs. That way, for my book, when I reference some material, I just don't say, it's I could say third paragraph, but I just have the numbering system. So 3.2 would be third letter, second paragraph. So I did an outline where I summarized it, which is longer, but still yet concise for individuals. So obviously they have to read these Screwtape letters either beforehand or in parallel, and so they can look at the first part of my book, which has that outline to help them recall things. And then if they're noticing some topics, and it's like, well, wait a minute, they're in letter 10 now, and they go, well, didn't Lewis say something earlier? And so they can look up that key word in that second section is a character and topical glossary, which was in the first book. And the first part is totally new. The second part is revised and revamped. In fact, the unique factor of it is that this topical glossary then has major and minor topics, as well as major and minor characters. But the biggest difference is if you're wanting to see like prayer is something that he addresses a lot more in his material, then you can find that in a quick way and summary, and then notice the ways in which he's talking about it.
Mm. And what was the motivation to do this big overhaul? Is this just something that's been niggling at you for a long time? Finally deciding to conquer the algorithm by calling it something different?
Right. No. Well, yeah, it was definitely much more than the first one, did sell some, but I wasn't going to retire early or anything like that. In fact, many authors will tell you, unlike people who are like aspiring to be authors, that you can probably make more money on the side doing a variety of other things as opposed to book sales. But I don't want to discourage people from going in that direction. But no, yeah, as I was re-engaging, it was in the summer of 2024 that I did a talk for the Central Indiana C.S. Lewis Society. And so that I did it from that approach by looking at the topics. In fact, I did Screwtape Saturday in 2024. And so, I mentioned that briefly a few moments ago. And so I was re-engaging it. And then I thought, well, you know what? When I was trying to do it in what at the time for YouTube shorts were just 60 seconds, and then they expanded it to 3 minutes. But few people really pay much attention to that, other than if you're trying to produce something in 60 seconds, you really have to make things very concise. But nevertheless, as I was re-engaging, I thought, you know what? That material is still there in that first book. But it can be, I was revisiting it and expanding it. And so it's like, well, let's go ahead and pull that material. So I contacted the original publisher, and he was very interested in that. And so I was pleased. So that's how it, came about to expand that to help people. With the 2025, at the time that we're recording this, this has been the 75th anniversary of Narnia. But few people realize that the first claim to fame was the Screwtape letters for Lewis.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think it's been the number one app at least some point in the past, the Hallow prayer app. They actually just went and did their series through the Screwtape letters. So I might have missed the publishing time because you did it right smack between the middle of our seasons as we were just wrapping up the last one. But at least we coincide with the end of that prayer series. But that was Screwtape. Do you have plans to write any more books like that, perhaps for one of Lewis's other books?
Well, yeah, different things have always been bouncing around in my head. In fact, just the other day, I was thinking about, I think I counted 3 books that never came to be, or one did per se, and that is the Misquotes by Lewis, of course, is something that people might know me by. Mm-hmm. But originally, I was also going to do myths about Lewis, or misunderstandings about Lewis. And so, because there was quite a few things there, but when I was collecting the misquotes, I realized that there were more and more. And then there was another individual that was going to maybe do the misinformation, because they had actually done a talk, but because of different time requirements for them at the time when I was working on the book, that never came to be. So part of that book came, but then that other part, I don't know will ever be large enough for a book. It might have to be incorporated in some other way. But then I've considered different things about Lewis, looking at each of his books. But since I'm not I don't come from a scholar background, I'm not a university teacher. Because of Lewis's specialty in medieval and Renaissance literature, I found that I wouldn't be able to really summarize those things. And So there's another individual who has also been working on some of their own material. And so we were going to maybe do that to look at all of Lewis's books for the average reader. So that may come to pass at some point. I don't want to go into details about who it was because they're still they do have was two books they were working on. One is definitely going to come to pass, but it hasn't yet. And then different pursuits for myself as well. But I would love to do another thing like I considered about doing some looking at Lewis's years. I think was one of the things, but nothing concrete right now. I could still do something on Narnia, which is very popular, but I haven't necessarily come at an angle that would maybe be unique enough to catch the eye. But obviously, with Netflix and Narnia in 2026, we'll see what happens with that. Just hopefully, Lewis's overall writings will become an interest, and people will learn more about this great author that we both love.
Mm. Yes, given that the first Narnia adaptation is a little less than a year away, now is the time to get inspired and write a book about Narnia really, really quickly.
Yes.
And when it comes to C.S. Lewis misquotes, one of the things I have 1,001 projects that I'd love to get to at some point, but what I want to do is isitLewis.com. And you can either upload a graphic or text, and it will tell you whether or not this is a legitimate Lewis quotation, at least for some of the more common ones, because it still blows my mind. It's like every internet forum, people say, "Oh, he's my favorite author," and then they share a quotation.
This is my favorite quote that he never wrote and you never read in his writings. Yes. Yeah. Well, the same year that I did this Screwtape Saturday, I also did Misquote Monday. And so while I didn't do 52 that whole year because I did some combination of things, but one of the things I did with that combination was I called it frequent flyers, flying around the internet. But yeah, that's something too. That original book had 75 quotations that weren't just falsely attributed to him. Some of them were paraphrases, and then some were actually, and these were fewer ones that were actually by him, but either isolated, they may not mean what you think. Well, either way, isolated, they may not mean what you think. But some of them were ones that were said by negative characters, and they could be justified for something on either political spectrum per se. And so that's rather interesting. But yeah, so since that book from 2018, the Misquotable C.S. Lewis, I've probably come across at least 50, if not more. And with also, besides the autism, ADHD. So I've got some files over here, some files over there. And, I kind of try to combine them without having a motivation to put together a book. And so I might just do another series, which I did to some extent a few years ago to highlight some of the newer ones. Because some of them also deal with Screwtape, which is not in this book. But you asked about other things that I might do. One of the things earlier in the year at Montreat, they do an annual C.S. Lewis retreat, and so I did the devotion, and so I did a Screwtape doing a devotion, basically taking a fairly regular morning prayer that I do and twisting it from Screwtape's language to suggest that he came across something. And then I realized that, and the publisher decided that it wouldn't fit in the book. It's just it's a nice, interesting standalone piece, but it doesn't, other than it, loosely related to Screwtape, it didn't hit the theme of someone trying to study the Screwtape letters. So I may self-publish. It's probably at least 10, 15 little devotions of sorts, and then a wish list, or you wake up in the morning, you have these thoughts, you don't know if they're good or not. And I was noticing, I'm sure as people might in passing, but Screwtape makes some reference to in his old days when he was a new tempter. So I thought, I wonder if I could do something with that, if there's enough to, we'll have to see.
Yeah. So. I think a prequel to Screwtape would be kind of fun. I think it would have to culminate in him betraying his teacher and then ending up eating him, just in the same way that he consumes wormwood at the end of the Screwtape letters. But yes, C.S. Lewis misquotes. It's a well that never seems to run dry.
Right. Yeah. Sadly, yeah. I mean, if the number of people that share, even just sometimes one misquote, boy, I'd have my income for the month.
It's also kind of funny that I also find sometimes I'm not nice about it when I point out that no,
It's hard. Yeah.
but even when I am the nicest I can possibly be, sometimes people really don't appreciate being told that their favorite quotation is actually not said by the person that they claim.
Yeah.
Uh, one of
It
my
means so
friends,
much to
Trent,
me.
he wrote a book called "What the Saints Never Said," and it
Hmm.
was along very similar lines, like Saint Francis of Assisi saying, "Preach at all times, if necessary, use words." It's like I like the sentiment that's behind it. Maybe it needs a little bit of tweaking, but yeah, Francis never said it. He said it's the book that he enjoyed writing that everybody hates
Uh-huh.
because nobody wants their precious memories ruined by being
Oh
told
yeah.
that they've been misquoting somebody.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And yeah, it's many of the things. I mean, there are a few things that are actually paraphrases, which if I did redo or did a new edition or whatnot, I would probably recategorize or do some tweaking with that one because there are some things that are the way I was considering it was like doing a word count to where like 80% of this is Lewis's wording per se type thing. I mean, there are some like that, and then there are some that are not, and then there are ironically some to where the most famous one, which is a good representation of Lewis's ideas, is a quote that actually is from Rick Warren in his book The Purpose Driven Life, related to now I'm forgetting it because I don't have that material in front of me, but it's related to forgiveness,
Humility.
humility,
Oh,
not
yeah.
forgiveness. Yeah, it is humility. Yeah, right. Yeah, you will forgive me. I will be humble and admit my. But
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, the one on humility. So it's great. Hey, enjoy that. It's a great sentiment, but let's attribute it, to the correct person. Is the overall theme.
Rick Warren has enough royalties. I think he's
Well,
okay
true.
with it.
Yeah, yeah. So, but
And what a claim to fame! I would love it if something I said was regularly shared on the internet as C.S. Lewis said this. It's like
well, I did come
that would be
across
an
one.
accolade.
The one about the children are not a distraction is besides Rick Warren, obviously being alive, but much more well known. There's the individual that did that, John Trainer, I want to say is his name. He had a screenshot proof back in, I want to say 2011, that he did it in a form or whatever. And one of the things about the misquotes often is, or falsely attributed, is people might be. This was in the earlier days. Now it's just because people see something online that's already attributed to. But in the early days, people would be reading in a book, and then it would have, it would, if it doesn't have a quote, people should pay attention to that at least, but it have a quote, then have a number, and then they go to the back of the book, and then instead of looking at number 8, they look at the number 9, and so that one says C.S. Lewis, but it was quote number 8, and so, but they like the saying, but yeah, anyway.
As well as, I think the other chief cause is paraphrases in sermons.
Mhm.
The Rick Warren one, I'm absolutely convinced that's how it happened. Because saying humility is not thinking little of yourself, but thinking of yourself less is
Mhm.
a very good synthesis of the point that Lewis is making. Very
Right.
pithy, but you can imagine a pastor somewhere saying, C.S. Lewis said that, and in their own mind, they're not reading a quotation, but they are synthesizing and summarizing. And then you've got people in the pews writing that down. It's like, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. And then it gets shared at their Bible study. It's like, did you know C.S. Lewis said blah 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 blah? And then someone put it online, and then it was out into the wild, and there was no calling it back.
Mm, right. Yeah. And what's interesting that I had it in my book, and I hope we could comment some more about my the Screwtape Letter Handbook here, but is that for the Rick Warren one, there are many places that he does directly quote C.S. Lewis, or else, or in addition to, I believe he also summarized. But in this place, when he mentions that humility, he doesn't.
Yeah.
And having brought anyone who's done any writing, you shuffle some things around, and you may not necessarily, you intended to note something about it. In fact, we've talked about the interview I did with Leslie that's not yet posted, but probably might be to some extent, I might do some parts, but that's beside the point. But she initially gave me the next to last proof of the book, and then I eventually bought it on Kindle. But there was something at the end that she said, and I didn't clarify with her, so I'm not going to reveal. It's nothing earth shattering, but she made some kind of comment. So at the end of the interview, I had, and I prepared my questions, and she looked at it, and I actually had a typo in it or something. She was correcting that. And then I go, oh, okay. Oh, and the wording of it. And then it's like, and I did a word search on the Kindle. I said, you know what? I can't find this in the Kindle. And I failed to mention earlier. So Jason Staples, someone that people don't know as well, he's not written yet on Lewis, but he is actually working on a book on Lewis and Scripture. And he was at the Montreat, North Carolina in April of 2025. And I have his 2 talks up, but he was noting that he was on the fly as we were just prepping. And he said, no, I don't find that either. But so, authors, and this person forgot that they took that out at the end. so anyway, so in the process of writing, it's quite interesting that, what you, might find or forget to put in or think you put in. So, you could say that I said something in one of my books and it might sound familiar. And I go, yeah. And then it's not there. And it's like, that David, boy, he's tricky.
Well, one of Andrew's greatest claims to fame is to be quoted in a Diana Glyer book and then to be cut in the editing process. So close.
Yes.
Well, let's wrap up by returning to your book. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about the handbook?
Right. Yeah. Well, so one of the things, since I did note about that, the topical glossary with the major and minor is, I do have in the back so people can notice, like at a glance, what the major topics are, and it's not that the other ones that the other ones are not important, but in terms of what Screwtape touches on, he touches on these certain topics more. I have for the entry on habits or habits is habits are initially mentioned as something that is fatal in letter 1.2. Then in the sense of being dangerous for health purposes. Then I note some more about the first letter. And then Wormwood is told about his patient becoming a Christian, not to lose hope because, quote, all the habits of the patient are still in our favor, 2.1. And then I note about in the third letter, and then it comes back in the 10th letter, 12th letter, 13th letter I'm seeing, and then in reference to some other characteristics, because some of the major topics then overlap. And so I have in bold other topics that are similar, like vanity is capitalized, choices relate to it, obedience. And then at the end of each entry, I also have just a long trail. So even though I mentioned some of the numbers, I'll do some of it again here, like 1.2, 2.1, 2.3, some more in 3, then and so on and so forth. And then I also include one of the things that some places don't include is the toast essay. And so in addition to what I hope people will find is a nice, good outline to follow along, because you and I who have read this many times, we can kind of have a pretty good, navigation, like, okay, this is in the earlier part of that or later part of that, or we can quickly find it. But when you've only read it maybe one time or a couple times, then it's harder to, kind of place where things are at. So even though this is a very short book, and my book is bigger than it, I think people will benefit from it to, dive deeper. I mean, it's one of the things that I noted, especially in the first one that came out in 2016, was this is not to take the fun away, the humor, the satire from it, but it's to appreciate it even more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really like summaries. It's like at the moment we're going through The Abolition of Man, and I have read and reread Dr. Lewis Marcos's summary of Chapter 2 of The Abolition of Man many times in preparation to record our episodes, because he's got a book, I think it's called The Beginner's Guide to C.S. Lewis, where he goes through the books, and in each one he gives a quick shoot through of what it's about and the chief arguments in it. Because although we have probably read C.S. Lewis more than the average person, there's also a danger of getting lost in the trees, when you're so deep in it that you actually miss the overall point that's being made because you like this little turn of phrase here or this little point here. It's often very helpful, even if you know a text well, to read a summary of it to remind yourself what is the main through argument that Lewis is using here.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, that reminds me of, I keep coming back to the conversations since I recorded earlier, but having um, Leslie's book being the focus, but Jason, who doesn't have a book out till maybe 2027 at the earliest. And so, as scholars covering similar topics, they're noting that it's not always the case that the scholars don't go, oh, someone's going to scoop me, but each other's work can help to understand. And so you're referencing about some material that helps to summarize, and so to kind of see, it's not like, oh, I don't understand what Lewis is saying, but maybe I wasn't considering this as much. Or it's like when we read the Bible. I don't do this as much now, but I used to read a proverb a day. And so depending on what I'm going through in my life, something will come out of the text and be more meaningful to me. Like right now in scripture, I've also, one of the things that I hadn't quite yet finished, but I do have a website that's called Easy Bible Memory, that it says coming soon. But I did do a free 5-week, it's 2 scriptures a week that will help people to memorize. They're mostly short scripture to springboard them into it. And one of the themes that I touched on was about in James, about don't be surprised when trouble comes along.
Trials many kinds. Yeah.
Exactly. But then there are some other scripture which has been now here more recently. I was like, in 2 Corinthians, the first chapter, there's no memory verse for that. There's 2 verses that you can paraphrase. We're talking about misquoting, but paraphrase it in a good way about the principle and the concept. So depending on when you're reading either Lewis or scripture, certain things can stand out to you and be more meaningful. So I'll bring this back around as we're finishing up, I guess, with the Screwtape letter. So when I was going back through to do the outline in a fresh way, I didn't look at any of my other material. So I looked to see what was standing out. And actually, I haven't gone back to look, but since the other one was more concise, I don't think I've missed anything. But it is amazing with Lewis and the authors, and especially the Bible, that whatever you're going through in your life, certain things will kind of speak out to you. So it's good to go back over these things. And so I hope with my book, the Screwtape Letters Handbook, that people will, hey, if they don't get my book, that's fine. Reread Lewis and the Screwtape Letters. But if you want to go deeper, then the handbook is the thing to go for.
Wonderful. And where should people go if they want to find out more about all of your various projects?
Yes, well, I do have williamoflaherty.com as a website, but it's not as...
That's new.
Yeah. Well, I've actually had it, but there's actually some stuff there. But for Lewis, essentialcslewis.com. And then now my YouTube channel, I am just calling it Essential C.S. Lewis YouTube channel. Either place there will be the main things. And then, if you go to williamoflaherty.com, hopefully we'll have spruce it up some more. But I did have it enough to where you could go to my Lewis, to my autism stuff, and then some maybe other things that I'll have, especially with that scripture memory. So probably later today, I will feverishly work on it so it'll be there live for people to enjoy. But yeah, so that's going to be some initial free material that's out. That's a 5-week thing, and then I want to expand it to either a 10 or 15 week that I'll probably self-publish at some point. But yeah, that's one of the passions that I didn't emphasize as much at the beginning when you're asking what I was up to. But that's one of the things.
Wonderful. Well, William, thank you so much for joining us. And viewers, please join us again next time. We'll continue going further up and further in. Cheers.
Cheers.